I have to tell you, I watched him last night. I mean, he is on it.
No, I was told he's exhausted, Glenn.
Oh, yeah,
That's what I was told.
Yeah.
Reliable sources like Kamala Harris told me he's exhausted. This is a tough job. He can't do this job. As if we didn't just witness you make excuses for a guy for 4 years who actually was in that situation.
Yeah, he is not. He is. No, he's sharper than ever. And I don't say that because I see him backstage. I see him, in conferences, and he's sharper than ever. Trust me. And he's on stage going, you can see it. Yeah. This speech he gave last night was so focused. He even, honestly, there were times he was reading the teleprompter, and I'm like, is he reading that off the teleprompter? I've never said that. He's usually on teleprompter like, and another thing we'll do, and then he'll go off and he'll meander for a while, and then he'll come back to the teleprompter. He was fantastic last night, and big vision, optimistic, with the people. I mean, totally right where people are right now. He's
closing well.
Game-changing stuff. If he can get in and do this stuff, game-changing.
And Rogan today, right? So that's a big one.
Good time to be on your game.
I've often said that I thought the best time Donald Trump the best performance he's ever had campaigning was in the few weeks following the Access Hollywood tape. Because I think that shook him, and there was a moment of like, oh my gosh, we're going to lose this thing badly. And he just buttoned up, and he was rock solid for several weeks. And he has his moments all the time. He has his strengths, obviously. But he can, as you point out, kind of go off script and do his stuff. He's doing really well because they put him in a position, and he's decided to take a position where he's going in and doing these podcast type interviews. And it fits him really well. Yeah. I mean, there's another world where if Donald Trump doesn't decide he ever wants to be president of the United States, he's just a big podcast host.
Yeah.
That's an absolute thing that could have happened in this world.
Yes.
Coming off of The Apprentice, he's a big, real estate developer.
I would highly recommend that if he would lose. No, I would highly recommend that. Just don't do it at this time period, please. Anyway, or this country. You could do it at some other, but he was finally someone saying what the problems are, but not just saying the problems. Here's how we're going to fix it. When you listen to this speech last night from him, where he's talking about, I think he's maybe even talking about no income tax.
Yeah. Now, as a person who has a mug and has been selling it for a couple of years, repeal the 16th Amendment.
Yes.
I am a huge fan of that particular part of that policy.
Yeah.
We should totally get rid of the income tax. Now,
and it's almost. I mean, I think it's the right time because he's talking about tariffs in a different way. He's talking about tariffs. You build your cars outside of the United States. Okay, we're going to put a tariff on it to keep cars that are made here in the United States cheaper. We have to rebuild. This is the only time I think I've ever started to agree with tariffs. We must rebuild our infrastructure. We have to have manufacturing here in America. People are under this illusion that, we did it before. World War II. When America sets their mind to it, they can do anything. What did we contribute to World War II? Manufacturing. We made the planes and the tanks and the Jeeps and everything else. We made the trucks that brought the whole world into Germany. Okay? That was our biggest contribution. We lost 500,000 people? Russia lost 20 million soldiers. Okay, we had the least on the table far as flesh and bone. We were important, don't get me wrong, and everything those guys did was obviously, okay? However, our biggest contribution was being able to turn manufacturing on and just produce a war machine. Okay, we had nothing in 38, nothing. In 39 and 40, we started to get serious because we're like, we're in trouble. And they started to tool. 41, we were way behind Germany in manufacturing. We could not even keep up. By 42, 43, I think we had almost doubled their output because we had our own steel. We had our own manufacturing plants. All you had to do is start making this instead of this. Tariffs would bring jobs back. At this point, later in our life, we may not be able to do it, but tariffs have a chance of saying, look, you want to sell your stuff, fine. Make it in America. Big stuff, big manufacturing stuff. Make it in America. We'll give you incentives to bring your company, your manufacturing here. So we have these plants. We are producing our own steel. We're doing these things. Meanwhile, we're also going to drill, baby, drill. And as he said last night, frack, 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 frack. And so we will bring our energy costs down. I think this is a game-changing moment. Game-changing.
And I'm never going to be in love with tariffs like some are.
I'm not in love with tariffs either.
But I mean, the size of the government that would be required for a government to be funded by tariffs is a size of a government I like.
Yes.
It's a lot smaller than the one we have.
Yes.
It does a lot fewer things, and I like that. So.
And we were all about that up until the 13th, 16th Amendment.
Yeah, I mean, look, we get rid of that. And it's a heck of a good step in the right direction. And I think it's also the right thing. I mean, there are really bad taxes out there. The income tax is one of them.
Yeah.
The
progressive income tax in particular. I'd go for, I just go for a flat tax. Everybody pays the same.
That would be
better. We all have the same skin in the game.
Yeah. And the payroll tax is another one. Trump has talked about that before, which is a regressive tax, not even a progressive tax, a regressive tax, where people who are at the bottom of the income scale pay a higher percentage than those at the top, which, again, is you'd think the progressives would be all over, but they want their money. Anyway, Trump has proposed a lot of these different tax cuts, and I think until this election, I thought that was what everyone did in an election time. He stands out. But I think
he's actually going to do a lot of these things.
Obviously, he's restricted by the form of government we have.
I know. If he has the Senate and the House, I think we'll do a lot of this.
And that would be great. It's certainly not going to go the wrong direction for once. And that would be nice.
If he could get half the stuff done that he says he's going to do in 4 years, and he has told me, Glenn, it's not going to be 4 years. We have 100 days. And he's right. He's got to come in and just go boom, 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 boom. Take everybody's breath away because he's got to turn it around and turn it around quickly.
Yeah, and I think if his focus is freeing people to do with their money what they want, rather than a centralized economic policy, which I don't think is a good thing. The more we centralize economic, strategy, I think we've seen this in country after country. That turns out poorly. This is what Kamala Harris wants, though. I mean, she wants a house in Washington making all the decisions for the entire country. And it's quite clear that that's not what Donald Trump wants. I mean, that's not to say that we can't I'm sure we can nitpick these policies and find things that we don't like. But at the end of the day, here's a person who understands the American economy.
Yes.
And by the way, I don't know if anyone recognized this. He was already president of the United States and things went pretty well.
Yeah.
Right? Like
it's not what it was in 2016. We didn't know if he actually believed these things. We didn't know. The only thing I knew for sure is tariffs. Remember?
Oh yeah, tariffs and at some level the border. Like those are two things.
War.
You mean being opposed to it?
Being opposed to war.
Those three things he's been really consistent on since like 1980.
40 years. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. And those things I knew he would do. I didn't know the rest. I didn't believe the rest. I'm going to make sure that we recognize Israel. Sure.
Right. Who would I didn't know if he would prioritize Israel. I didn't know that he would, name Supreme Court justices that would overturn Roe versus Wade. These are things that I really, not even doubted, was somewhat sure he wouldn't do back in 2016.
I was positive he wouldn't do it.
But I think understandably, and that's why I think, too, you're seeing a real failure of what Harris and Walz are trying to do with this whole fascism Hitler thing.
Oh my gosh.
If in 2016 you have a guy who's a businessman, who's never been in politics, who you can't necessarily lock down in all of his policies, he's a guy who's most famous for saying you're fired to people over and over again.
Oh, I hope he becomes more famous soon.
At some level in 2016, maybe you can convince some undecided people. I don't know. Is this guy Hitler? I don't know. Like, maybe you'd be able to work.
Hitler was the guy. Here is the definition of fascism. Hitler took the government, made it all regulations, and then went to the companies and said, I'm not going to put you out of business. You just have to make what we want. You have to make it how we want it and follow all these regulations. You can keep your company. You can get rich. He made public-private partnerships. Well, that's not what Donald Trump is doing.
Yeah, and I'll point out, I mean, if you want to look at the defining piece of domestic policy for Donald Trump during his first term, probably the easiest way to summarize it would be deregulation, right? Like you could talk about the border, but like some of that stuff he got done, some of it he didn't. You could talk about a bunch of different policies, but like defining when it comes to domestic policy probably is deregulation. He did that all over the government.
Yes.
Did Adolf Hitler, was he famous for deregulation? I'm pretty sure.
We will cut regulations. I will completely stay out of everything.
No, he didn't say that.
That was not his policy profile.
We want privatized gas chambers.
What?
It's dark, but it's I mean, it's funny because it's just like, it's so inherently stupid. I mean, a closing argument, and I think like I was thinking about this because there's obviously a totally different strategy from the Harris campaign here in the last couple of weeks. So like, now we're going on TV all the time and he's Hitler. No more joy. It's so bizarre.
It's so weird.
And I wonder if partially, obviously they know this isn't working, but I think their strategy, their piece of this argument behind the scenes is likely there are no more undecided voters we can get.
No, gotta charge our people.
Now charge our people. I want the MSNBC viewer at the polls.
Yes,
and
that's exactly what's happening, and a setup for trouble after the election.